Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Pelican, built tough for all situations. Go to pelican.com. Yak Gadget, for all your fine kayak fishing accessory needs. Go to yakgadget.com. Eastport Marina, on the beautiful shores of Dale Hollow Lake, for all your lodging, kayaking, and fishing needs. Go to eastport.info. Now let's get this show started.
Welcome back to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin Podcast. I am your host, Sean Lavery, and with me tonight is my PNF brother from another mother, Mr. Jimmy Skinner. Welcome back to the show, Jimmy. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, man. It's been a while.
It has been a little bit, yeah. Probably back when Ryan was still with me, wasn't it?
I was just thinking, I don't even remember I don't know if it was the line show we did.
I'm trying to think.
It's been a minute.
It has been a hot minute, man. So, well, Jimmy and I got to spend a lot of time chilling out down at Dale Hollow. And when we got back, he's like, you know what? We should do a show on frogs. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. Jimmy was talking up his frog fishing while we were down there, saying sometime I got to go visit him and he'll put me on a frog bite, something fierce. So that's definitely a bucket list thing for me because I don't have great frog fishing up here where I am. I've heard some people have luck, but I don't have a ton of luck with them. I have a few places that I can go. The camp that I counsel at is about the only place I've ever had a real good frog bite, and I think that's because darn near anything will bite up there. But
hey, take it how you can get it.
That's right. They're also much bigger fish up there, so they swallow it easy. You know, you've seen those videos online at least I have on Facebook where they just show it slow motion, the frog just kind of hopping, and then it just is engulfed. That's the kind of, blow-ups that you live for. But
it's definitely my favorite kind. I love the one where it just like whoop and it's gone.
Oh yeah,
the water just sucks out from under it. Those are my favorite.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I also love when a smallmouth knocks it like a foot in the air,
I hadn't had that happen yet. That is like frog, smallmouth is like high on my list. Like really high on my list.
I've seen those river smallies, man, knock it just sky high, and they get fully out of the water. It's crazy.
Heck yeah.
But so for those uninitiated in frog fishing or looking to get into it, I know there is an art to it. It's not something necessarily that comes intuitively. I know it took me a long time to the number one thing I had trouble with is I get so excited by the blow up that I would just yank it right away. And
that's probably the hardest thing to. I mean, and I still do it. If I'm paying attention, I've done it enough now. I can usually like do a quick count and then hit them. But I'm always, when I fish, I'm looking around for seeing swirls, stuff like that. When I hear it, that's when I freak out. I'll just hear it when I'm not even looking, and you don't ever get those fish.
I think I almost killed you with a spook one time when I freaked out over a topwater blow up down the first time we were at Dale Hollow.
Those are, I think those are a little more dangerous than frogs. They're almost guaranteed to get you. I have a buddy that would probably argue with me on that. One of the frogs we're going to talk about, I saw him hit himself in the face with it at like Mach 5.
Oh,
it hit him so hard that when he turned and looked at me, he had a little blood. And as it started to whelp up, I could take the frog and set it to his face and tell you exactly where the hooks, the head, and the leg were. It hit him that hard.
That's funny. Man.
And I laughed a lot.
So I figured I'd get started with generally where you look to throw a frog. Because obviously you see lily pads and generally, that's going to be a somewhat good place to throw a frog. But is there any other places that you're like, what, that's definitely some place I would throw a frog?
Just about everywhere. It just depends on, like if they're in a good topwater mood. Sometimes I'll start with a buzzbait and be smart. Sometimes I just go out and like, nope, I'm going to die by the frog today. And it depends on what frogs you're throwing or if you've gotten comfortable with anything. Like you said, a lot of people associate frog with lily pad. it is very rare I'm actually frog fishing around lily pads.
Okay.
Usually my favorite kind is when, like on Gunnersville, the grass has came up, starts to mat up real thick, but it's thick enough you could punch through it, but usually you've got enough of a surface water mixture where when you throw a frog, you still have room for it to move, whether you're throwing like a paddle frog or a hollow body. But I throw them in open water too, like you was talking about river smallies and stuff like that. Like when we hit the creeks and stuff, when it gets warm, I mean, I'll throw a Zoom horny toad on and kind of buzz it across the surface. And I don't know really if there's any truth to it, but in the open water and like creek river situation, to me, throwing like a full size hollow body or a like a paddling frog that we're going to talk about here in a minute, they just look a little out of place to me. It just looks kind of, I mean, and that could be stupid because I mean, you see frogs get the size of your hands. It just doesn't look right to me. So that's when I swap back to something like the Zoom horny toad. It's real small, real flat, easy to get up on the surface. You can just Texas rig it, nothing.
Yeah.
I would say that's like an entry level frog, honestly.
Okay. And as you were talking about that, I just remembered more frogs that I have hanging up there on a different hook that I didn't bring down with me. So maybe that's a good place to start. We can talk about the different kinds of frogs because they're when I first started fishing, I think of the frog with the tassels and I guess a hollow body frog is what I would consider the prototypical frog one. But there's actually quite a few different kinds. So
yeah, and to give just like a quick breakdown on the types of frogs, if you were to say them in like types, so you've got hollow body, which everybody's familiar with. It's a real lifelike looking frog that's got typically their double hook with a skirt. Then you have, let me open these. You have a popping frog. Same concept. It's a hollow body, but it has a cupped face. My shadow is working against me there, but what they're for is instead of them just making motion, they're actually chugging water and causing a little bit of a wake and spitting water
almost
up.
like a popper mixed with a frog.
Exactly. From that, you've got paddletail frogs, which we'll get into this brand, but this is a frog this is more of a cast and retrieve frog. It's not, you're not worried about walking this one. You're throwing it out and reeling it in, which is a huge advantage for me. I like to use this to cover water. And it's probably a great option for people that are not patient. Because in my experience, hollow body frog fishing takes a lot of patience. Sometimes the bite's just on fire, but sometimes like you're leaving a frog in the strike zone for like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, especially if you know they're there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Zoom horny toad. It's got the cutter worm style feet on it. It paddles real nice. It's super lightweight, real flat, and you just, like I said, you Texas rig it, and what's great about these is they don't float, so you can use it Texas rigged in many different ways. Even without a weight, it's still heavy enough to get down. So it's springtime. I've never done it myself, but I know guys that'll use these to raid bass beds. Some guys are throwing lizards and beavers and stuff like that. You can throw this past the bed and sink it down to them and swim it up to it, and they'll munch it. But that's just a rundown of kind of the kinds of frogs and different types, and we can go into like where each of them work best or whatever you want to do. We can do however. We can talk.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot
that
of
sounds
frogs.
That sounds like a good place to start. So obviously, topwater, like they can kind of be broken down. Most of them are topwater baits, but the one you just showed, the horny toad, is probably not as much a topwater, correct?
I mean, I would still consider it a topwater because 90% of the people that I've met that throw it or that I've seen throw it, that's what they're doing. They're buzzing it across the top. It's just, it doesn't float, like I said, so it's something you're going to work a little faster than most. But yeah, so where I would throw that, like we just said, you can use it for bed fishing scenarios, but I really like throwing it when I'm creek or river fishing and I'm in areas with open water, but there's laydowns. And you can do the same thing with a buzz bait. But sometimes, like, let's say that they're wanting to hit top water, but maybe they're just not after all that noise from the buzz bait. They're not, the clacking is not doing it, the squeaking. I'll throw the frog up there, and let's say you have a laydown coming off the bank. I make sure I cover the whole thing. I like to throw the horny toad. Again, it's Texas rigged, so you can either Tex pose it or kind of hide that hook tip. I'll throw it on the bank if it's not just like a nasty bank that you're not going to get it back from. But I'll throw it on the bank and then just kind of twitch it down into the water. And then again, since it doesn't float, you got to immediately get on the reel. But another advantage to it is it's a lot more subtle of a movement. It does kick and it kind of sways. But I don't know, if you think about some of these other paddling frogs with these like huge feet on them, it's not making that kind of wake. But you can speed it up to make it, kind of rip through a little more. But that's usually how I'm fishing that one, throwing it around laydowns, brush piles. I will throw that on, matted grass, lily pads. I don't think there's not a frog you would throw at that stuff. An advantage, I don't know what kind of like lilies setups you have up there. I'm assuming they kind of all look the same, but when you get those lily pad like fields is what I call it, where you've got those pockets of water around, that's one thing I like to do too, is throw the horny toad up on one and then twitch it off and let it dive off of it instead of buzzing from one to the other. Sometimes that works too, but sometimes I like to have it sit on top and I'll twitch it off and it'll nosedive. Sometimes you'll get the strike that way, which it's not really as exciting that way. Because, I mean, let's face it, we're all fishing frogs because we want those, like, Bassmaster TV blow-ups or a 10-pounder jumps out of the water with your frog. That's what we're after.
Right.
But, yeah, that one, as far as, like, rod and reel, I actually, because I'm fishing at open water, I will throw lighter gear on this one. And lighter, not meaning a light setup, lighter than the broomstick and winch cable I'm using on other frogs. I do not throw under 50-pound braid on anything unless it's like a spinning reel. Obviously, I'll throw like 10 on a spinning reel. So typically for me, this will be tied straight to 50-pound Power Pro because it's thin, the moss green. I have never been able to say I've seen them be line shy of it because it's a reactionary thing. They don't care about the line. They see something kicking. This frog, I use a 4-aught. I had it. I don't know where I put it. There it is. I use a 4-aught Gamakatsu. This is just a round bend worm hook.
Okay.
I like that. Just I don't know. It keeps the hook when you've got it rigged up. It keeps the hook, the main line of the hook, real close to the body, real tight. So less likely to clog up with stuff. It seems to me, personal experience, I think it keeps the frog running flatter because when you throw it on a wide gap with that wide bend hanging out, when you're hitting just the slightest stuff, it's making the frog roll left and right. So
that makes sense.
Kind of dodged that. But so the whole reason that I texted you about this to do this episode actually is because I was listening to your buzzbait episode and was like, oh, dude, we need to talk about frogs. So something that he was talking about that is very true with this too is gear ratios and reels. You may think you want a fast reel for a good retrieve on a frog, but it's quite the opposite. Maybe an open water frog, you could get away with it, but like he said, those lower gear ratio reels that have that mechanical advantage to really winch on them in the thick stuff. So I'm probably still a little fast, but I use the Shimano Ceratos and the Shimano SLX reels, and the middle, I think it's a 7.3, 7.4 ratio is my go-to for like frogging.
Okay.
And then the line just changed depending on what frog and what kind of area we're fishing.
Okay.
But yeah, that's about it for that one.
And then so the retrieve is more of like you said, dropping it off of lily pads. But if you're just kind of pulling it through, letting the action work? Or are you kind of just slow retrieve, or you're buzzing it, or you're switching it up to see what they're after?
Typically with this one, just because, like I said, that it will sink, I reel it however fast it takes to get it on the surface. I don't burn it in, but I keep it what you would consider, a lot of guys, you'll hear them say, keep it gurgling instead of really buzzing. And that just means to me that if I back off the reel speed this much, it goes under. So I just want it it'll, the best way to explain it, it'll look like it's riding heavy in the water. So the body is almost trying to sink, so it's pushing a lot of water, but it's up high enough and fast enough that it's actually letting the feet have their motion.
Okay.
And that's about the only retrieve I use with this, unless I'm doing, like you said, around the lilies, where every now and then I'll play with it and let it drop off of them. But even in the lily fields, sometimes, like Gunnersville, we get lilies that are, 3 feet wide, that like I've had one wrap around the prop on my kayak and you don't go anywhere. Like it stops you. They don't break. So these are real cool because if you can be an accurate cast enough to target an open patch, you can actually reel this thing and it'll actually just bounce off of them left and right versus just skipping across the tops of them. So yeah, tons of versatility with this frog.
Okay. Well, then we'll jump to the hollow body frog next. And again, I've seen videos where people chuck those on top of mats and kind of work them across the mat until they hit an open spot. And then once they hit open water, they'll just kind of kill it and let it sit there. But I've also seen walk the dog kind of style with those too. So
yeah, so hollow body is, like you were saying, how frogs, it's not just something you can pick up, that there actually is a little bit of an art to it. Hollow body frogs can be very difficult to learn, especially because a lot of people, me included, when I first started throwing a frog when I moved to North Alabama, I wanted to walk the dog because that's what everybody you see on YouTube and all the pictures is it left, right, and it gets smoked. You have to really know your equipment and really pay attention to that, because what needs to happen to make one walk is not what you think needs to happen. So you may think, okay, I've got to twitch the line quick. Well, you're twitching, creating slack, and then popping the slack, if that makes sense. So basically you're creating a bow in the line, and then you're snapping the bow in the line before it actually makes contact with tension from rod to frog. It is hard to explain, but you're literally just working the slack, not the frog. So yeah, so hollow body frog, like we've talked about at the beginning, just a soft body, hollow. Obviously, that's what makes it float. They're skirted. Typically, this is something I'm gonna throw heavy grass mats, good lily fields, dollar pads, and I kind of will go hand in hand with this one and a paddle tail frog, which we'll get to, or a paddling frog. But the retrieve really just, I don't want to say it's kind of just how they're eating it that day. And sometimes it's different from bite to bite. Like, especially like if I'm frog fishing and I'm watching swirls and looking for, evidence of, because frog fishing, you're going to get guilty of everything looks good and froggy. So you're like, okay, I've got to throw a frog in this entire 5-acre pond. So big piece of advice is to look for any kind of signs of life. Bait fish running, bass spawn running around, just anything to narrow it down. But we'll start with walking the frog. So when I fish these, I don't fish these with under 65-pound braid. 7'3" mag heavy Dobbins 735 Fury rod. It's a great, what I would call budget rod. They're $120, and I've tried some higher end frog rods even from them, and I go back to that $120 rod every time, because it's got enough tip that you can feel it when you're casting it, so you can be really accurate. A lot of these heavy frog rods have no tip, and to me, it's really hard to get an accurate cast when you feel like you're throwing a broomstick. But yeah, 65-pound braid, same reel as we said before. And then when you get to walking one, some of the professionals, and like you mentioned tactical bassin and stuff like that, they talk about tying a loop knot on the end, where basically what that is you have an open loop of line for X amount of inches to a knot, and that loop is supposed to help it walk easier. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot say that has ever helped. Like,
Yep.
I've tried them different lengths, different line sizes, and it's still difficult to me. I tie, a Palomar straight to this 65-pound braid. I mean, you can kind of still see the knot on the end of this one where I cut it, and it's all about, like I said, knowing your equipment, knowing how much line your reel takes up each time you crank it, because it's a rhythm, just like I showed you with the spook.
Yep.
It's a rhythm of pops and like quarter cranks or half cranks, and then you've got freaks in nature like Greg Blanchard that can sit down, hold his rod tip in the air, and he'll walk a frog just by cranking his handle. I have no clue how he does that. I've tried that so many times and I can't do it. Um, but that's the most popular. Um, so once you've learned walking it, you've got your cadence down.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's do you let it walk left and sit, count to three, walk right and sit, count to three, or do you just walk, 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 walk? That is 100% up to you, how you're feeling it, how they're biting it. Like, let's say you made a dozen casts in an area, there's a fish, and he didn't bite it when it's just walking left and right fast. Slow it down. Just walk, 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 or walk, stop, walk, stop. Um, like you said, you can do the pause technique. You can walk, 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 hold. And I've watched a video, I think, of Roland Martin letting one sit for like 3 minutes, and I'm not about that life.
No, that's probably not why most people pick up a frog, to let it sit for 3 minutes. But
No. Like, he killed, and and he's got it on video. He lets it sit and he gets bit. That's great, Roland. Good job. Like, not me. But something I don't count out is the biggest frog bite I've ever had that I lost was just reeling it. The Booyah Pad Crasher is my go-to hollow body. This black and red one right here, which this one's a new one, so the skirts are like, it's one thing. Booyah gives you a lot of skirt to work with,
yep.
but I end up cutting mine down. Like, you can, if you see that, I mean, I cut 2 inches off. But the black and red one is one of the best nighttime frog stories I've ever had. It was while I was learning how to frog fish. My buddy was just smacking on them, and I could not figure out what he was doing that I wasn't doing. He handed me his rod, reel, and this frog. He said, "I've caught my biggest fish on this one. Don't lose it." I said, "Okay." Been doing the walking thing in the dark, which is even more difficult because you can't see if it's walking. You just kind of feel the line pop.
Right.
And he said something. He was like, sometimes they just like you to drag it. So I threw up in this lane. It's like 1.5 feet wide, and I just started reeling it to me. And it just, because of the way the body's designed and like how the weight's basically right in the middle, it'll sit down heavy in the water and make a wake. And I just reeled it in, and the way he explained it is it sounded like somebody dropped a bucket of concrete off of a big ladder and it just hit the water. All I saw was the water disappear, and it made this just bagoosh noise, just that's like haunts my dreams. And 65-pound braid. I always a little tip. I keep, when I'm fishing that thick stuff, that heavy gear, I keep the drag locked all the way down. There is
Okay.
no reason, in my opinion, like if you break 65-pound braid, you either tied a bad knot or that was a dinosaur of a fish or something, like just a huge fish. But that fish sucked it under. I set the hook, did the 1, 2, 3, punched it. It was dragging me to it. I was not
Wow.
making any distance on him. I was going to him. I could feel him moving back around, and he sat down, and I, kept winching. Heard a ding. It's like, crap. Then I thought I broke the frog off. Pulled pulled it in and I picked it up and I'd straighten the hook out on that frog. And
Wow.
if you know anything about these frogs, the hook is stout. But when I pulled, and then, I mean, it wasn't, I mean, obviously it's not straight, but hooks that sit like this, and one of them was sitting up a good 30, 40 degrees. And I just looked at my buddy, and he just calmly was like, well, that's the biggest fish I've ever seen out here, and just paddled away. I was like, thanks. But yeah, so there's a lot of heartbreak too. Like you said, the figuring out the timing to from when you see or hear one to when you smack it.
There's some great videos out. I watched one. It was almost like scientific talking about that, and I think their final recommendation was at least like a 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 set. Enough to.
So I can do that, but mine goes, what was that 3 set?
Yep. Yeah. No, I know. So the patience that it takes. So I started trying to at least do two 1,000s. Because it feels like an eternity, or you can if you're patient enough to wait till you feel it. I don't know if that's tough too though, because you want to really, once you feel it, then it's already tight and you can't really bury the hook as much as you want to.
Exactly. I definitely try to. The way I explained it to somebody is like, I like the weight of the fish being there to be a surprise. Like I swing and just hope it pulls back. Somebody, love him or hate him, one of the best ones I've heard was Chad Hoover. He says, set the hook. So it takes it down, set the hook, smack. And that kind of, I just do 1, 2, 3 in my head, just 1, 2, 3. And arguably it's about the same speed. But sometimes I don't wait. Like if I visibly watch one just freight train it, he's got it. So I'm going to wreck him.
If it disappears, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when, like, if I watch one and you can tell, like, if the frog's here and the blow up's kind of like off centered, but you still lose the frog, that's when I wait, because you're like, yeah, he may have not got it, or he may only have one hook, and they'll give that secondary little slurp, and then he'll get the rest of it. But yeah, I would say a good rule of thumb is, like you said, 2 to 3 count. If you're counting 1 to 3, maybe count to 10. Like. But there's gonna be a lot of heartbreak.
Right.
You're gonna miss. If you're in thick stuff, sometimes you're just not getting to him before he figured. Because sometimes when they bury up, no matter what you do, they have a way to give themselves slack.
Right.
I don't think that there's. I mean, I'm sure there's cheap and bad frogs, but I mean, you can catch. They all have really good sharp hooks, and you're gonna get the hook in them. 30% of the time, I would say. I
was going to say the hookup ratio isn't as high as some other baits, but
some people may go on a big streak and say I'm lying, and it's like 80%. Maybe if you've been doing it for 10 years and you just got this perfect storm, but I like come summer, this is all I do, and I'm still missing. I mean, whether it's excitement, it's too thick. I mean, sometimes, like, I've had a day where I was on the water and was just like, Jesus, I can't hook up with one, check the frog, and then realize, like, the hook's dull. Like, it's just, I've had this frog on forever. Because they'll blow up and smack it into a stump, and you've got it buried in the wood. So just like anything else, check your hooks. But yeah, so that's about that on, like, walking one, reeling one, I guess you would call like a work and pause, stop and go, retrieve. That's about the only thing you're going to do with the hollow bodies. And like I said, I throw them in the thickest stuff. You don't want to throw it in, and some people would argue this too. If it's just so thick that like a good way I judge it is if I throw the frog and when it hits the slop, nothing moves as far as like there's no wake, like it didn't really make a ripple. I'm not wasting my time with a hollow body there. I'm getting out my punching gear because the frog ain't doing anything.
Right. One of on the local lake that I fish, there's a guy. He's I consider him like semi-pro. He talked about one of the favorite places he throws it on that lake because there's no lily pads on that lake. I'm like, you throw a frog? He's like, yeah. I like to skip it up under all the overhangs because it really does get up under there and doesn't get hung up. And that's the one place I'm not good at skipping with a baitcaster yet. I can skip with a spinning rod, no problem. But I'm still learning with my baitcaster. So that's the one place that by me that I've heard that people had success. And he said, yeah, just take a hollow body frog and skip it up under those overhangs and the stuff that's right on the water, so that other things like with a kind of more open hook would definitely kind of get snagged up in there. But he said the frog comes out almost every time.
Yeah, because the way the hooks are designed into the body, like they are exposed, but like I can take my hand right now and I'm rubbing directly across the hook points and they're not catching. It's designed for the body to collapse to expose it all the way. So, I've never done it, but I have seen guys do it. Same as you see guys skip buzz baits under laydowns.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of guys doing it with the frog, and it's a really good point to it not like snagging up. And then the other thing is like how many people are actually doing it? So you might
Right.
be, that fish has probably had a Texas rig thrown over its head 5 million times. It might be the first time he's ever had a frog thrown right over his head, and he might want that. So that's a really good piece of advice. I'm glad you said that one because I would have forgot all about that just because I don't do it.
Yeah,
you probably could do it with the horny toad.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, because that's Texas rigged and pegged probably, or not pegged, but Texposed. So I think it would come through. But
pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. How about the kicking frog, or the what would you call that? Like the top toad?
Some people I've heard them call them open water frog, swimming frog, paddle tail frog, or boot tail frog, because it's kind of got boot feet on it.
Mm-hmm.
This is my bread and butter. I'm sure people are going to be mad at me for talking about it, but joke's on you guys. It was a secret like 5 years ago. Everybody's told their buddies up here. Everybody knows about it. So it is a hollow body frog, obviously, with a pair of legs with horizontal boots on it. And this thing is like a bass killer. It has a very extraordinary hook system. So it is they call it I think it's a double takedown or something like that. But it is a double hook. This is probably about a 6 or a 7/0. And it has the threaded, oh Lord, I can't think of what it is. Screw keeper. Yeah. Bait keeper. So this frog you attach very similar to like a swim bait hook. You thread her on there, get her upright. I should have done this a minute ago.
The screw lock, that's what it's called.
There you go, screw lock. And then you put the hook between the legs. And the top toads actually have a little recessed area that is the perfect little spot. And then you bury the tips of the hooks down in it. I have this one done very poorly, but that's what she looks like. If anybody can check that out. Here, hold on. There we go. So, got the little dangly feet, double hook with a screw lock. So, it floats. And it swims really, really well. I usually start with this. If I've thrown this for 5 hours and I haven't got a bite, that's usually when I try like something else, which it's usually too late by then. But I live and die by this thing right here in this one color for the most part. It's black and red flake. I will throw this anywhere that I can throw where I know it's going to make commotion when it swims. This thing has the coolest gurgle sound. You can reel it really fast and get a really good, crazy, splash going from it, or you can what we call gurgle it, where this thing is just barely creeping along. There's no pop in this one. They do make a popping version of this, which I have, and I haven't got bit on it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and say I don't like it. Because I really tried last year and could not get bit on that thing. Has the same legs. The only difference is it's got the cupped head, but
interesting.
Can't make it work. But no walking the dog. You do a lot of the stop and go. But I throw this in the where it's you got like a good thick layer and then open water underneath, and use it to cover water. You can run and gun with this thing just like a buzz bait again. And if it's been hot, like this is how I start my mornings. This is how I end the day in the afternoon. Even if it's, I mean, I've thrown it in open water and got bit. I've never caught a big one doing it, but it's just something about it just drives them nuts. And you can go as far as I've put a worm rattle in it, and it'll stay in there. It's got a pretty big opening in the back. It'll stay in there for a few casts, but sometimes that little bit of noise rattling around in there is great. But this one again, 65-pound braid. I mean, because this is a giant hook and they are sharp, but you really want to smack them with this thing. So, heavy rod, big winch reel, and just go out there and make a million casts with this thing. It's so much fun. You can throw it up on the bank and pop it off and get bit up shallow. I'll run it across the lily fields like you were talking. But 90% of the time, if you find me in the summer using this, I find thick, just nasty water. And this is my bread and butter. I love this rock so much. Sometimes they're hard to find. Like you can't even, I'm sure different stock in different areas, but like Arcabellas keeps very limited amounts of these things, and usually the hooks are harder to find than.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen the back. That took me a little bit to find to get the hooks for them, because they definitely very specific hooks. So
yeah, I got lucky. They're an Academy Sports went out of business when I was living in Birmingham, and I just happened to walk in there and they were like $1 a pack. And I bought all of them, and I haven't bought hooks for these in 4 years. Because you're not losing
right
many hooks. I've had these fling off. I mean, they'll bite them. These things will get torn up, and you won't be able to hide the hooks in it anymore. And that's when they do start to kind of suck, because they will bring up all the trash out of the water with them. And when it's dragging trash, it makes it kick weird, and that's one advantage to the hollow body with a skirt, is it's not going to do that. The little skirt's going to keep doing it still the whole time. But it's just great.
I was trying to remember who the guy was when I first started watching fishing videos online. There's a guy who was a local guy. He was either South PA or Northern Maryland, and he used to do a show he called the Power Hour, where he would go out before work, first hour of daylight, and he would fish a white top toad through the ripples on the Susquehanna, and he would catch smallmouth on it. And that is where I first heard of using the top toad, and I've done it. I've replicated it. It totally works. If you can find ripples and current seams and breaks like that, and you just run these across the top of them, smallmouth will bite them. Even though like you never see a frog out there swimming, for whatever reason, it works. And there's something about the smell. It's definitely a strong smelling frog.
My hands are gonna stink all day tomorrow.
But
this stuff doesn't wash off well. I'll tell you that too. Whatever they got in this, you'll smell this 3 days from now in your truck. And it never made it in your truck.
When it's laying on the floor of my kayak, that's all I can smell. So they're definitely strong. But after watching that guy, and I wish I could remember his name because he's a cool guy. He was one of the first guys who he would, I could message him and be like, "Oh, I saw you catch this. What kind of line were you using? I'm still a rookie at this." And he would totally take the time to message me back. I know he does guiding for snakeheads, or he did for a while. I don't know how much he does anymore, but I apologize. I'll find his name and put his name in the notes, because he's definitely a cool guy. I just got to look it up, and he's a friend of mine on Facebook. I just can't. His name is escaping me, but he was the one who introduced me to it. Jimmy actually sent me some of because I had white for the longest time and didn't have any other color, but I got some green ones from you that I actually used, and they worked as well. So
I was gonna say if there's another color I use, it's baby bass.
Hmm.
It's kind of like a green pumpkin with gold flake, and it's got a silver bottom.
Hmm.
Um, I cannot tell you like a reason, like or a situation where like that one over the other one. Sometimes if I've just been throwing black in areas like we've got little honey holes here that we go to in the summer and just catch frogfish. If I go out one night or one day and I just can't catch them on black, I'll try on baby bass. Sometimes baby bass. I mean, same bait, slightly different color, and you don't think that color matters because they're looking at it from underneath. And if it's sunny, they're probably seeing a shadow anyway. But sometimes that little change is all they need to, get fired up.
I was trying to remember, like, we did do a show on frogs a while ago, and I forget who the guest was, but that was one of the things that he talked about a lot. He said, you know, they have all these crazy color patterns on the tops of frogs, and he's like, that really is just, to, catch fishermen more than it is to catch fish, because bass never see that. You'll have like black and yellow leopard print frogs and, all these crazy ones. And he's like, but if you flip them over, their bellies are always either black, white, or green.
Yeah.
So,
and that's something you'll actually see me do when I'm buying them is like the Booyah Pad Crasher which that's a bad example of one. I don't have the green and yellow one anymore, but like when it's sitting in the pack, obviously like any of them, you see the black and yellow, and you're like, ooh. Well, when you flip it over, this is actually a Spro. This Spro is black and yellow striped on the bottom, but a lot of the Booyah Pad Crashers, like this one, you can't see it anymore. It's got blue details on it, but there's nothing on the bottom. And just like you said, it's catching the fisherman. I like black bottom, and then there's a bunch of the green. It'll be green on top. It'll actually have like a yellow and orange, kind of like a sunfish pattern on the bottom. I like those. I try to stay away from
this
the
one
whites.
has a little bit of it.
Yeah.
It's got some yellow on it, but
is that a ribbit? Not a ribbit.
I'm trying to remember what this is. I forget where I've thrown it a lot, and
I think it's a live target.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And you can see the top has all sorts of weird leopardy stuff, but again, they're hardly ever going to see that. All they're going to see is, basically the belly, which on that one just happens to be a little bit of yellow, but mostly white. So
I've got the small versions of those. It's a little local joke around here. Our little fishing club used to make fun of these because they may have changed their little formula for them, but these things used to be good for one bite and then you'd lose a leg. So we actually have a little decal that used to run around the North Alabama kayak anglers. It's a silhouette of one of these with only one leg. Because you'd spend $3 or $4 on it and it'd work one time. then it was just done.
This one I think I've actually caught too, because my daughter liked it. When she was real young. She's like, "Why are you throwing that, Daddy? It's so cute." And then it sat on the console in my truck forever because once I caught 2 fish on it, and then I was like, "Oh," I cut it off, and then I never put it back in my kayak, and I kept forgetting it was there. And she would play with it every time she got in my truck. And yeah. And then I have this little one. I think I won this somewhere. It's a chase baits, either that or I got it in a box for free or something.
So that brand is fantastic.
Okay.
They make some cool looking lizards and geckos, and I thought that they were just gimmicky at first. Like you said, catch the fisherman. A buddy of mine saw them at one of my local little bitty tackle shops here and freaked out and was like, "No, dude, these are hard to find." And he showed me some videos of them, and apparently, they are the deal in certain situations.
Interesting.
So I would definitely take her out of the box and give it a throw.
I will have to try that. This one's a lot smaller, so I could see you could potentially throw that on a little bit lighter setup too. So.
Oh yeah, and as long as you, again, I think your line is based off your cover, like
right.
Open water. I'll throw them on straight 50-pound braid. I've been in the situation where I've seen fish blowing up, didn't have any of my frog rod stuff with me, no braided reel. I always usually have braid to leader, but sometimes I don't want to cut that leader off because if the frog doesn't work, I got to go back to whatever it was on. I'll just tie it on. It'll usually be like 17 to 20 pound, and I'll just roll with it if it's open water or just a few laydowns because the fluorocarbon's kind of tough.
Right.
But yeah, no, the top toad is like the gangster of all frogs, in my opinion. Everybody throws them. You just hear people talk about them. The same way when people used to try to hide that they were throwing the chatterbait, they'd say vibrating jig. You'll hear them call a top toad. Tons of different things, and there's not really too many folks that are making them or making a style of frog like that. Which kind of blows my mind because I feel like it's very popular.
Yeah.
At least down here in the South, but I mean, you're in PA, and I've told you 10,000 times I really want to come spend a long weekend up there because I want to fish the Susky. If that's a thing, that's all I'm doing now. Like, I didn't know that this was a thing, throwing a top toad for smallmouth in the current. I wanted to get up there and throw swim baits and stuff. If that's a thing and I can get a 4-day weekend and come hang out with you, that's all we're doing. I'm bringing $200 worth of top toads, and me and you are gonna figure it out. Like,
well, I just got a GoPro, so I want to film it and see if I can replicate the power hour and see what I can catch. So I'll hopefully get some footage I can show you. So,
heck yeah. Well, what do you want to hit next, man? That's basically the styles and kind of the areas I throw them.
One of the things I was going to talk about was modifications. So I know you talked about like putting BBs or rattles in them. I've heard, definitely cutting the skirts is a one you almost got to do right off the bat. And I've heard different schools of thought on that. A couple people said you kind of bend it back up and cut it at the length of the hook. I'm not sure quite what the sense behind that is, but I've heard that.
I don't really have an art to it as far as the skirts. I look at one and I'm like, okay, that's too much.
Yes.
And then I'll cut a little bit off and be like, man, a little more. That looks good enough. And then sometimes I get down to this and I'm like, well, I think I cut that one too short. But I still catch fish with it.
Right.
I don't know. I've seen guys take it and instead of doing like just cutting across, they will flare them out. And they will stagger them so that they're all different lengths. And they'll usually, I can't remember who it was, probably a tactical bassing guy, would leave like 3 strands, or maybe, 3 to 4 or 5, whatever, strands on each leg full length. But he would drastically cut the rest of them. So it only had a few long ones, and then the rest are kind of tight. Don't know why, but those guys fish a ton, so it's probably got some kind of, proof to it somewhere. But
I've heard of guys cutting one side longer than the other.
Yeah, heard that.
So
I tried that, and I just feel like that frog looks retarded when I do that. Like, I cut one. I think I did like one really short, one like half length. And I don't know. I just didn't like it. I threw it for like 10, 15 minutes. I was like, God, this just doesn't look right. And again, I don't know if it matters. Like, I've caught fish with them with full skirts. Like, I don't know if it matters.
Right.
I usually cut the skirts just for the fact that the water's just so matted up. I don't want them getting like all like hung up.
I always joke I have this one in my tackle box. I think I put it in with some Z-Man baits and the legs kind of melted. So I cut it off, and this is the one I throw in my backyard when I'm grilling so I can practice casting it on my bait caster. So
dude, that's a good idea.
I didn't want to I didn't want to throw it away, but that's when I practice my bait casting is when I'm grilling. I have a little wall around my patio, and I just stand up on the wall like I'm standing on my kayak, and I cast in the yard while I'm sitting there waiting. So
I do the same thing. I practice, which I don't know why I practice because I don't do it a lot, but I'll always set a cup in the driveway because my Blackstone's in my carport, and I'll just turn around, and me and my daughter she'll watch, and I'll just like set the cup anywhere I can see it, and like sometimes she'll set it's 22 yards to the street, and she'll set it at the street, and I'll we'll do it for 10 minutes, and I'll start hitting the cup that far,
Wow.
Yeah, I've never thought about doing it with a frog though. You should take that one out though. See if you can get fish. Yeah, get bit with no skirt.
Yeah, I mean it's worth a shot.
I mean, you might fall into something that like it becomes a new thing. You buy a $7 frog and cut the legs off.
It's hanging out in my frog box, so you never know. I'll have to someday.
That makes me want to cut the legs off of a top toad and just use it as like a regular hollow body and see what happens.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah, it's happening this year. It's happening Friday. We're going on a. They told me it's a 17-mile float trip on Gunner's.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's supposed to be some good area that we can probably go ahead and get a frog bite going. So I'm being extremely optimistic because I just really want that to happen. But
No.
other than that, as far as like the BB and rattle thing, you can use the worm rattles. I use Carolina beads a lot, whether they're glass or plastic. And I use even the saltwater ones. I don't even know what they're called that you put like on pompano rigs, just because I've got tons of those.
Okay.
They definitely work better in hollow bodies. You kind of pull down on the frog and you get it to open up around where the hooks go in. You shove it in there, shake it around, and go with it. And a buddy of mine does a lot of like experimenting with baits and stuff like that, and he only runs the little beads or rattles in them. Like he buys a frog, it gets trimmed, it gets a bead, and that's how it goes its whole time. But have you messed with popping frogs much?
I've never thrown one. That's because to me, I always just throw a popper. So
yeah, and a popper probably has a better hookup ratio. Trebles.
Well, like I said, I fell in love. My guests are probably tired of me talking about it, but the Rico popper, I don't know what it is about it. It's kind of stupid expensive, but I have so much confidence in that if I think that I'm going to throw something chugging or popping, that's what I'm going to throw.
Yeah, no, and there's certain times like I really like the Mega Bass popper.
Okay,
but again, stupid expensive for a popper,
yeah.
but I like it. So sometimes it's worth it. But I also like just kicking it with an original pop R. Like
No,
you can't
right.
beat the old pop R.
Well, for some reason, I don't have success with a regular pop bar, and to me, it looks very, very similar to you put it side by side with a Rico, and there's so many similarities, but I don't know what it is about the Rico, but it is totally a confidence thing. The one day, I probably was crushing it on the Rico for probably like a week straight, and I'm like, okay, you know what? It's got to be just any popper, and I threw the pop bar for a day, and I had no luck, and I went back to the Rico and started catching them again. I'm like, I don't know what it is. It was just a total confidence thing. It had to be because I don't know what else.
That's kind of me with the Booyah Pad Crasher hollow body. Like I've got, this one's a Strike King. I've got a Spro, which Spro makes fantastic hollow body frogs, but they are proud of them, so I don't buy that many of them. I have this. I think I have two, and it was because you do the Spro tournament. You have to throw their frogs.
Oh, I heard about that.
So I bought 2 frogs, and that was it. And then I found out I had missed registration, so I bought them for no reason. But the Booyah Pad Crasher, whether it's the regular or the popper, this is their poppin' frog and smoke. This is probably the only, which I have their hollow body in this color. It's a transparent with black specks. I love throwing this one in the daytime because it'll give it a little bit of a shadow, but the light will go through it. Same thing I think about like fishing clear water with like, rattle traps and stuff using like the translucent colors so the light can pass through a little bit.
Right.
To me, that just kind of hides from the fish what it really is, so that they just. Here's a one. I don't know if you're familiar with the Sprinker, the Teckle Sprinker frog.
I've heard of it. I've never seen one or played. Oh yeah, with one boot tail. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a weird one. Never caught a fish on it. Probably because I don't give it much time. But it's basically got one, like you said, one soft plastic boot tail, and then it's a skirtless hollow body, but it looks just like any other hollow body. It has a very strange hook angle. The hook base swoops down, and it keeps the hook tips kind of high and back, lower in the frog. It is very strange. But I know guys that swear by these things. I'm not one of them yet.
Probably the Lunker Hunt prop frog.
I hear that one's fantastic. I haven't got to use it yet.
I have never caught a fish on it. I've thrown it quite a few times. This has like a weird trailer hook and everything. So it, all sorts of weird things with it. But it's interesting, and it definitely kind of has that whopper plopper kind of plop to it.
That's what I was gonna say. Like it might be one of those things. Like if you ever get on a whopper plopper bite, just tie that on real quick and see if it continues. But
I've had it on quite a few times. I haven't had any luck with it, but I'll keep trying it. So
yeah, probably my favorite two popping frogs. I love the booyah. Um, so something we didn't talk about is with frogs, you got to feel them. So some frogs have this is the Jackal Gavacho. I couldn't remember who makes it. It's got 3 skirt ends, nice double hook. The hooks on these things are fantastic. But it's kind of a stiff plastic. So you think about, okay, the fish has really got to bite that one. But you know, I don't know. I can't say out thinking about it. I don't really know what goes through my head when I'm like, okay, today that tough body's good, but tomorrow's not. It's just kind of a feel thing. Like maybe if I've missed a few, I'll be like, okay, they're not biting that one good enough, and then I'll go to something like this. This is the River to Sea Tommy Biffle Spit and Wah. This is a very soft frog. Like it takes 0 pressure to collapse the body, and the hooks on this thing are like nuts. And the cup on this, where a lot of them are just molded into the plastic of the frog, this one has basically like a glued on ring that is clear, and it is actually like a cup. It's got vents in the bottom, and it allows the water to hit and spray and also pass through. So it gives it a completely different chug when it's popping through the water. And it's actually got a very small profile for a, if you look at the Gavacho, it's a couple inches, maybe 2.5, 3. This one's, half an inch shorter. Still comes with, these ridiculously long skirts. I haven't trimmed this one up yet. But I didn't throw it last year. I got into popping frogs the year before. For some reason, I didn't even pick them up last year. So I'm going to get back to it this year and keep putting this one through the ringer. But I really, really like this one. And then scum frogs. Scum frogs are fantastic. They are super soft, and I like their skirts because it looks like they take the time with their skirts. It's like getting a skirted jig. Like they put different textures and color palettes together. It's got a huge spitting head on it. It's the same diameter as the whole body. And this is another small profile, really soft frog that chugs real well. I haven't thrown the popping frogs enough to be like, this one's the best. This is my go-to. I kind of take all of these with me and just go back and forth. And, when one starts hitting, that's the one I throw. But yeah, I think that's about it. About all my favorites.
Cool.
Not a topwater frog, but another hollow body bait I started dabbling with because I thought it was gimmicky was the little live target spider.
Oh, neat. Check that out.
So I bought those thinking that this was just funny, and went up in a creek and tied this on, and we absolutely wore them out with this thing. Downfall to this thing is it will fill up with water and sink, so you'll have to pull them up, squeeze all the water out, and it'll go 10 casts. But the creek fish hate this thing, and I love it. The spotted bass were we were sitting over 10-foot deep pools, and I was just throwing it to see how it works because the little legs are very.
I was going to say they just sit there and the tiniest bit of movement, it's going to make those twitch like crazy.
Yeah, and all you got to do is work the crank of the reel, and it'll just sit there and look like it's just bouncing across the water. And I was just checking it out, and then out of nowhere, just boom in the middle of the little river we were in, dead center, just boom, and I was like, what? And then I kept throwing them, and I mean we caught fish on them all day.
That's pretty cool. Was that ICAST 2 years ago or something? That was
it got bait of the year, new topwater of the year, or something like
and
that.
And everybody I heard so many people say, "Oh, it's totally gimmicky," but then after that, people were saying, "No, it's actually catching fish."
Well, I think they make a bigger one now too. When I got them, this was the only sizes they had. Now I think they have one that's maybe not double, but pretty close to double that size. Because my worry was this thing's got the double take hooks on it, but they're tiny.
Mm-hmm.
They were working, but I was like, man, I was
going to say if a spotted
with
bass
a
is
7-pounder, I don't think these little hooks would do it. But I'd like to use those, like you said, somewhere where there's smallmouth. I think smallmouth would like that.
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
remember to try it though.
There's
But,
definitely places where on the Susquehanna where there's some overhang banks that I think that would work. Where there's trees where a spider could definitely fall out of the tree, and I think
yeah, you should definitely try one. It's just if you can get them to start biting it, it's fun. I haven't ever caught a big fish on it, but like it's like when you watch the nature videos of them eating stuff that falls in the water, and they
Oh yeah,
absolutely like massacre it when they hit it. It's just as cool as it getting hit on a frog. But yeah, I think there's tons of great brands. I think just if you're going back to the noob side of it, first thing would be gear. If you live somewhere where it gets swampy and sloppy, do yourself a favor and spend the money on a decent heavy rod. You can probably use any 65-pound braid. You don't have to use Power Pro. I like Power Pro because the line diameter is thinner. So, I don't know, goes through the guides easy, has a really good feel to it, a lot of good sensitivity. Like I said, anywhere from like a 5.7 reel up to, you probably want to stay in the 6s. I use a 7. Make sure you get the winching power.
right.
If you're, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. If you're using a hollow body, you're kind of set on hooks. If you're using a horny toad, you could probably just get away with it. Whatever worm hook you're confident in for soft plastic worms or craws, they'll do it.
I definitely want to try that because I've always thrown them those kind. I forget. I'm trying to think what the brand I have upstairs is. And who was the guy? I'm drawing a blank on. He used to be a PNF host. He got me hooked on one brand. He was he was a rep for that brand, and he still is.
You talking about not Ricketts, but Sam?
Sam, yeah. Who does Sam go with?
I can't remember.
He got me hooked on a frog that looks very similar to that. It's dense. It's not a hollow body. It's a soft plastic, but
is it a ribbit?
No. I should run upstairs. I know right where they are upstairs, but in the garage. But they have a specific hook. It's like a 2-prong hook, but you can also Texas rig them too. And I always used an EWG gap or EWG hook, and I never thought of using a regular kind of worm hook.
Yeah, depending on the length, 4/0, 5/0 round bin. Like with the Gamakatsu, you can get them that I think they're called Superline, which means they're thicker. I would probably go with those just so that you don't bend one out in some case you get like a good fish and it gets you, down into some stuff.
Right. Well, and I think with the EWG, it almost acts like a keel, like you were saying, and it sits on anything and it's going to fall to one side or have a tendency not to be run true. So,
which something you could say about the EWG though is it's going to give you a better hookup because the shape of it, they're going to get that hook deeper. Just for me, I like it all to be real streamlined so that it's not snagging, it's not rolling. Because that is something kind of like with the Walker Flopper you'll get. You got to kind of work and watch your rigging or it'll like come in upside down. And the horny toad is a little bit, the plastic is, it's got bumps and grooves on one side and it's just like smooth on the other. So that probably will change how it's running. And for me personally, like when I start to see one running upside down, I just like cancel that cast out for some reason. Probably a stupid idea, but I don't know. I'm like same thing. Every now and then you'll get the top toad to come in upside down. Yeah. And I'm just like, no, bad cast. And then I'll start over. It'd probably work just the same. I mean, the feet are still on the water. It may give you a weird hookup. You may hook one in the bottom lip. That'd be kind of terrible, but might work.
It would, yeah. You could still probably get it in, but it's definitely not going to be the easiest way to do it. So
I can tell you this, and you can probably speak to it too. When you get a good double hookup, like they get both of the hooks in a top toad, it's usually a mother to get them off.
Oh yeah,
they have got that thing.
It's stuck. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a get the pliers out kind of thing.
One last frog to mention. I don't have one, but I was going to see if you've looked into them. Have you seen the frogs that have the Velcro patch on them?
No.
So the theory behind that is it'll have a little Velcro patch on the back. The if it was hook and loop, it would be the loop side. And one of the guys' theories was that the way the bass's teeth on their lips are,
Interesting.
that it
That
gives you
makes a
that
lot of
extra,
sense.
yeah, it gives you that extra confidence that maybe he didn't get the hook good enough, but now his lips all marred up in that Velcro.
I was gonna say all
So,
those little teeth are, tied all in that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually.
yeah, I don't know who makes them. I've been meaning to find some. I always look when I'm in tackle shops and I never see any of them. So maybe it's maybe one or two brand thing right now that's doing it, but it's definitely something I'd look into because the quote unquote science sounds right.
No,
But again,
it makes
may
a
catch
lot
the
of sense.
fisherman.
True enough. But there's a lot of little things like that some people might know and swear by, and if you haven't heard of it, then you're not going to know about it. So
All right. Well, man, that's about the extent of my knowledge. Other than that, just get out there and like give it a throw. Like, don't be afraid to just go spend a day on it. If you think that there's a topwater bite possibility, or a good little swampy area, or lily pads, or even open water area,
Mhm.
go out there and you figure it out just by anything else in fishing. Just keep doing it. You'll start to notice the little things that seem to make it work.
Right, and the first time you have a blow up, you're gonna be hooked, because that's one of the coolest things in bass fishing is a topwater explosion, and that's what frog fishing is all about. So
I was so addicted to it the first few years I got into it, but it was like, how'd you do that day? Terrible. Well, yeah, well, I was in the same area and I whacked them. Well, I threw a frog all day. Like, sometimes I'm not afraid. Like, when we go to our little honey hole, I don't take anything else, which is not, if you're something we didn't get to, I can just hit on real quick. When you're frog fishing, it's a great idea to have what they call follow-up bait. Um, let's say you're fishing in a slop, throw a hollow body in there, they hit it, blow it out of the water, and there's that little blowhole where he busted out. Throw a Cinco in there.
yep.
Have it on, if you're going to do it, you want to have it on a little heavier gear, but you don't even have to work it. You just throw it in there and let it sink. And for them, they're thinking they're getting whatever it is they stunned, and boom, then you've got him. Where I fish, it's a great idea, but it is a nightmare when they bite the follow-up bait, because you're not bringing them to you, you're going to them. Like, it's hard to bring a Cinco back through some of that stuff with that little
Yeah.
bitty hook and that thick mat. You're typically just keeping line tension and letting your boat get towards them, just hoping you can keep all of them tight. Hoping you keep it just tight. But yeah,
I've definitely had times where I feel like I've found the most uncoordinated bass ever. They'll be hitting to 2 inches to the left of it. I'm like, come on, just hit,
oh
I'm
man, that's the days that make me more mad than the days that I come in when they didn't blow up. It's when they blew up a lot and they just kept missing.
yeah. I'm
and
like, I'm not the most coordinated guy, and if I was a bass, that'd probably be me. But I'm like, I always find the uncoordinated bass, that just miss. That's why, with the pop or the Rico, at least it has trebles all over it. So when they do miss, you occasionally still snag them. But
something that's worked for me on that is, like, if I'm working any of the frogs and they give it a miss and I didn't set the hook, it was a clean miss, I will just kill it, let it sit there for
right.
10 seconds, and then I'll just twitch, and then get it back in motion. And I've had that work a lot. They'll still be right there in the area, and they've kind of collected themselves and like, okay, where'd he go? And then that just little subtle, just tap, and then they're back
still
on
there.
it.
Yep.
And then now, when he misses again, to hell with that fish. I'm done with that fish. Me and him are not talking that day. Like, you can't be that uncoordinated guy.
That is one thing, though, that I've actually heard a lot about frog fishing in particular, is that once you find a fish and get him to explode, then you know he's in there and he's hungry. So odds are something you can throw is going to catch him. You know?
Yeah, definitely don't. If you have a good blow up, you know it was a bass. You know, whether you're in the really sloppy stuff or in the pads, he's staying in that general area. It's not a hit and run. Like they just backed back off. Give it a second and keep working that area, and chances are they'll bite again. Most times, just again because this is just you think power fishing and aggressive. Like this is like the king of aggressive bass behavior is topwater blow up on a frog. I mean, I love fishing a buzzbait. I think they hit a frog way different than they go after. A lot of my buzzbait bites is them just slurping it down. Like they will blow straight out of the water after it.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite videos, and I thought about trying to find it that we could screen share it on here, is there's a picture of a guy fishing a frog and they got a camera on it and there's a huge blow up and it is a fish coming out of the air with the frog in its mouth. And you're like, oh, that's cool. And then this like 7 or 8 pounder back comes out of the water and it was him that blew the bass out of the water and the bass just got the frog. And you're just like, seeing that in person would be like, I'd need to go to the doctor. I'd have heart problems after that. Which, I mean, I've seen some crazy blow-ups that I would love to go back and be able to set the hook different or react differently. And you're going to get a lot of that. You're also going to catch a lot of species. So be ready for that. I've never landed a bowfin. I hooked a ridiculous bowfin last year. I thought it was a bass until I went back and watched the GoPro footage and realized that when he splashed, I could see his tail. And it was a giant bowfin. I would love to have had that because apparently this area I'm fishing, a couple of guys have gotten really close to the state record bowfin out of it. I'd like to throw my hat in that. But you're going to catch gar like to bust at them, which is kind of terrible because they will tear up your frog.
I was just going to say, I know I've heard the same thing about snakehead. You know, near us, not super near me, but a little like southern in Maryland, snakehead is apparently, you know, kind of taken over at certain points. And I've heard that they will massacre a soft body frog. You know, they chew it up. It's like dead.
Yeah, you think about throwing one of those like 9.7 to I don't even know what they cost anymore, but like a spro frog. If I'm throwing a spro and because the gar bite's usually different, you kind of can tell once you do this a little bit, you'll start to be able to tell that bite was just kind of weird, probably a gar. Bowfin, I mean, very closely related to a snakehead. It's like a bull shark attacking bait. I mean, they just destroy it, but you still get your heart going because you're like, oh, big fish, but it's usually the wrong species. But the gar, it'll be like a quick, just like a snake bite, and then your frog's gone. And when I see that, I get out of like, if I'm throwing.
Whoop, did I lose you? You froze up on me, Jimmy. Are you still there? Let's see if he comes back. We'll give him a second to come back. Definitely got lots of good info there on frogs, guys. So thanks for if you tuned in and hung with us for the whole hour and 13 minutes that we're at right now. I thank you, and we'll definitely hope that you guys can take some of these tips and get out there. If you start hammering them, throw a comment in the show notes in the comment section and just let me know how you do. I'd love to see some success on frogs. I love to hear people getting hooked on frogs because once you like Jimmy was saying, once you experience that blow up, man, you're gonna live for it, and that's what you're gonna love to experience. So I was looking on while Jimmy was talking, I found it was BizBaits. Sam, my apologies. I totally forgot, but I remembered and I looked it up, and it's called the Pad Daddy by BizBaits. That's another. It's reminds me a lot of the horny toad that Jimmy was talking about. We'll definitely have a lot of these frogs that we're talking about linked in the show notes, so you guys can check them out. Let's see if Jimmy is dead in the water. He's messaging me. Storms are here. All right. He's going to try and get back in. Jimmy's having some storms in his area. So he warned me that, it might knock him out of the session here a little bit. But while we're waiting for him to come back, let me see if I can share up my Pad Daddy. Let's see here. Pad Daddy, there it is. BizBaits Pad Daddy share. So that should there you can see the Pad Daddy. That is the one that Sam Jones got me hooked on. Again, you can Texas rig that right through the middle. It has that deep kind of valley that it can sit right in, and works really good. Jimmy's coming back in. Hey, he is there. Welcome back, Jimmy. Hey, I found the bait that Sam Jones told me about. It's BizBaits Pad Daddy. Can you hear me? Oh, he's almost back.
Oh yeah,
Do you remember?
BizBaits. Dude, I forgot all about.
So Sam Jones got me hooked on those.
Yeah. I can't.
Did we lose Jimmy again? He's just having some storms in his area. So thanks for hanging in with me, guys. He should be back here shortly. Let me see if I can add him back in. Well, anyway, guys, that is the Pad Daddy from BizBaits. So if you're looking for a soft body, or it's a soft plastic frog, actually, it's not hollow. It's pretty firm. It does sink, so it's a lot like the horny toad that Jimmy was talking about there at the beginning. So we'll give Jimmy 1 second to come back in here because I want to give him a second to shout out his sponsors and everything if we can get him back in. But guys, I forgot about the fantasy fishing with Paddle and Fin. We still have that going on. So if you want to come in, we're not even through the first quarter yet. So we're going to do all 4 quarters of the year, prizes for each quarter, as well as an overall prize package, and kind of like a championship for that. So if you haven't got a team chosen yet, definitely get in there and do that. If you go to paddleandfin.com/fantasy, you can build your own team. It's definitely a challenge. This year's a lot harder than the last couple of years, the last year, but my team is definitely struggling. Jimmy's back.
Storms beat us here, man. I was hoping
I
could hear the thunder. I was hoping we were going to beat it, but they got me. But yeah, the BizBaits ones, yeah, that's a cool one.
Well, while I have you, I want to give you a chance to shout out your sponsors and everything, and where folks can find you. Obviously, they can find you on Paddle and Fin as host of the Reel Down. That's your show, right?
That's it.
That's what I thought.
So yeah, first one again, Paddle and Fin. Check us out on the Reel Down if you like tournament fishing. Our shows post on Wednesday mornings at 6 on all major podcasting platforms. Me and Dan Perry are kind of back at it together. So be sure to check us out. If you want to follow me, I've been kind of dormant on it, but I'm getting back to it. At Down South Kayak Fishing on Instagram. I've been kind of backlogging a lot of stuff, so I'm about to get back to posting a bunch of content on that. Thinking about starting to add stuff to my YouTube, but that's just a lot of work. And I already don't have time. But real quick, shout out to my sponsors. Big one, Music City Outdoors in Nashville, Tennessee. I work with them and I direct their pro team. We got a bunch of great guys, and it's a really good shop support system. They really take care of us. I appreciate them. Yak Gadget, another great one. Love all his gear. Have tons of his stuff. If you're looking for a good crate, check out his XD crates.
I love my XD crate for sure.
I can't not, I've debated on, sometimes I'll want to go out and not take a lot of gear, but I end up taking a lot of gear because I love the crate, the rod holders, the angled storage. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And I just can't see paying the crazy money for a black pack when that works so much better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the new black pack that's coming out is pretty cool, but at the time, my dog is over here panting like crazy. I'm sorry if y'all can hear that. He don't like storms, so he's freaking out. But yeah, the Yak Gadget crate's just it's the best. Other sponsors, Dobbins Fishing Rods. Like I said in the show, they have plenty of different lines of rods, from like, I think it's a $69 or $79 series up to, $450. Give them a check. I highly recommend the Dobbins Fury 735 Froggin rod, if you're fishing in any kind of heavy cover. Bending Branches, stayed on with them this year. Love their paddles. Just got my new one I won in the raffle, the Copperhead Angler Pro, I think is what it's called. I should probably know that, but
Was that the really pretty one that I saw on Facebook? Isn't that one?
Yeah, the red one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their new pattern for this year. They did a little in-house raffle. It was kind of like how they picked what color to go with. We did surveys and did a lot of answering questions, and they picked a bunch of names, and I was one of the ones that got the paddle, so it was awesome. But just got that in, perfect for creek fishing. So huge shout out to them. Great company, great backstory on them. Bioenno Power, I'm running a motor setup on one of my kayaks now, the 100 amp hour 12 volt lithium. It's killer. I mean, I was doing 10 miles a day on Del Hollow when we were all down there minimum. Never had a problem with the battery. I've never had a problem with any of his batteries. I use his 30 amp hour battery to run my graph and lights and stuff like that. They're all fantastic. To give them a check out, Bioenno Power out of California. New Canoe. I can't skip out on New Canoe. I've been with New Canoe for a few years now. Just got a little promotion back up to regional staff. They did some changes in how the team dynamics work, but I'm back on regional staff for the central team. Is it South Central? I think it's just Central. I'm on the team. Holler at me if you need any info on New Canoe. But I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. But shout them out later if I can. I guess I can't think of it. I haven't had to shout my sponsors out in a long time, so it's kind of on the spot.
If you think of it, definitely let me know, and I can throw it in the show notes for sure, and we'll get them some coverage that way. So
yeah, if anybody is listening to this show that's involved with any of these frog companies that would like to help a guy out with a frog addiction, I'm your guy. Me and Sean, we'll make it happen.
Absolutely. So, all right, Jimmy. Well, thank you again so much for coming on and spilling all your frog knowledge. That was tons and tons of good info. It's got me jonesing to get back out on the water, and I finally have a heavy rod. That was the kind of the last piece to my frogging setup that I didn't have all of last year, and then Brian went through him and got hooked up with the Douglas rod. Finally, I have a heavy rod now, so I'm looking forward to trying a lot more this year. So,
heck yeah! Are you what about that one Douglas rod that's sitting on the bottom of Del Hollow?
That was not a heavy rod, and that was a
heavy enough rod to go to the bottom.
Yeah, pretty quick. So I just got shipping notification that Brian got his reel today. So Brian, nice. I hope you're enjoying that Daiwa reel, and hopefully Douglas will hook you up and get a new rod back in your hands. Because nothing made me sadder. I was on a high because I caught my PB on Saturday, and then Sunday was just crap and topped it off by losing one of Brian's best rods. So even the rod he handed me, and he's like, "Hey, use this rod, but it's my favorite rod for Ned rigging, so don't mess it up." And I sent it to the bottom of the.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh yeah, straight down the bottom you go."
So, but yes, so hopefully he is enjoying that, or soon to be enjoying that. The Daiwa reel and the new rod, but I will hopefully be putting my Douglas heavy rod to work, catching some frogfish this year. So, guys, thanks for hanging with us tonight, and I'll make sure to put a lot of the frogs we talked about in the show notes. So if you want to shop for them, definitely check that out below. And as always, thank you guys for watching the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rope more lips. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You can support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and fill your tackle boxes today.